And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Tuesday Night Tune-Up, part of Arkansas Motorsports Magazine's weekly lineup. Tonight we're in Fort Smith, Arkansas at Chuck Knight's Racing Shop, and we've got Chuck and Fort Smith, another Fort Smith racing legend, Tilly Evans, with us tonight. And before we get underway, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Chambers Bank, 26 locations in Arkansas, 2 right here at Fort Smith to serve you. Shaw Race Cars in Batesville, Arkansas, Weston Petroleum, True Grit Auctions down in Dardanelle. Please go to their website this week. They've got a fantastic automobile online auction going on with a lot of antique autos and automobile memorabilia. Check that out. You can bid online. And we also want to thank Phil Potts Automotive over in Greenwood, Arkansas for helping sponsor tonight. And we'll flip it over to Heath here and let him get started with these two great, well, no, not has-beens, but I mean legends in stock car racing here in the Fort Smith area.
And been racing for 40 years.
Yes.
At least?
At least.
At least.
50. More like 50.
50 for me. And lots of racing, I guess, against one another at times.
Yeah, really, it seemed like I was always in a different class with Tilly. I started, I guess, what, a year before you?
I think so.
So it seemed like as we got going, I moved up to a different class and he was running her. And then later it'd be, I was in a different class and he was like modifieds or whatever. And so we never run against each other a lot. But we did, but not a lot.
And I knew he'd been racing for a long time because I've got a guy that we were talking to today that I graduated high school with that was going with a friend of his and about 6-year-old that was going and watching Tilly run. It was a friend of his, I guess it was your sponsors back
In the 80s.
in the 80s. Yeah, so.
Who is it?
His name is Brandon Whitaker. He was a young, but that was traveling around and watching you run.
So what years did y'all actually get started racing and where?
Myself, I started at Razorback Speedway in 1970, 71, and I raced 3 times and the season was over. So then I raced at the same place there next year, the following year.
And that was at age
I was
15,
I was
16.
I was 15 when I raced them 3 times, 15 or 16, I don't know. And then the following year I raced the whole year.
What about you, Tilly?
My first race was at Mighty Mouse Speedway. I drove Joe Cox's car in a mechanics race. Joe was a good friend of mine, and my dad owned the track at that time, but my actual first year of racing was in 73. It was a pavement track at that time.
And about that age, at that point in time when you was running, your first time was
That I was 16 or
17 years old
sir.
when you got started.
Yes, sir.
And on asphalt, not dirt.
Well, the first year the first time I drove, it was dirt. But the next year the track went to pavement. I didn't race as 71. And in 72 is when I really started racing.
Now your dad built the Tri-State Speedway. Well, like I said, it was Mighty Mouse.
My dad.
Tell us a little bit about that.
My dad started going racing at Razorback Speedway, and Razorback was struggling. So he decided to build a track, and his favorite animal or cartoon was Mighty Mouse, so that's why he named the track Mighty Mouse. And it was a small, little bit bigger quarter-mile dirt track. And Mighty Mouse really did well his first year, but Dad had gone to some pavement races, and he really liked the pavement racing. So the second year, he decided to turn it into a pavement track, and they made it big, a half mile. And he had a contest. Patsy Crowder, I don't know if you remember Dennis Crowder, his wife won the contest. She's the one that named it Tri-State. And that's how it got started.
And it was asphalt then.
It was asphalt.
Yeah.
It was also a half mile. at
Yes,
that
it,
point, yeah.
it was a half mile. When it went from Mighty Mouse to Tri-State, it turned into a half mile track. And the big deal back then, everybody wanted half mile tracks, but because of the property and stuff, it's not a real true half mile. It had a half mile concrete wall around it, but everybody was wanting half mile tracks, so he called it half mile. And insurance was cheaper on a 3/8. So on insurance wise, it was a 3/8 track.
Outside wall was
A
half mile.
half mile wall, and you're supposed to measure the racetrack so many feet down. So it was a little bit bigger than 3/8, but it wasn't a true half.
Yeah. It was fast track. You know, for, back then, for most of your dirt tracks, when it went back to dirt, that was a fast place to go to.
It was a fast track. In 72, my first year I raced, I just remember because I was racing, but my time, I turned in 19.5, which was a track record for that class. It was hobby stock class back then. But it didn't hold very long. Pat Owens come out a couple weeks later. He was like 19.2 or something.
What year was that?
That was 72. No, 72.
And I guess at that time, on the asphalt, I guess, and you ran over there some on the asphalt.
Yeah,
Also.
a little. I run a little bit. I want to say 73,
Yeah.
just a little. I didn't run all year, money wise, but I run a little bit, and then in 74 is when I really got going good on
And
asphalt.
And at that point in time, what years was it that I guess down here that y'all probably run? I mean, that's when you had like Rusty Wallace was coming over here and racing
Yeah.
on the track.
It was like
And,
77, 78.
in
when
that
Rusty
area
and guys
when they
started showing up.
started showing up and running.
Yes, sir.
And y'all was running with those guys over here too.
I was in a different class.
Class.
I got to run. I drove Dennis Crowder's car a few times against those guys, but I was running a different class when they was running.
See, I had a late model by then, and once again, I didn't race every week, but I raced against Mark and Rusty. But, I wasn't going to outrun what I had. Actually, Mark and I became good friends because he would bring me his used tires, and he'd take them off, at baseball, bring them up, or I'd either go get them or something. I got to race a little bit more that way,
We was fortunate in asphalt days that we got to see some of the people. We got to see people like Triple, Seneca, Shear, both Allisons was here, Ed Howell was here. We seen some all-star people here.
But at that time, you probably didn't realize we were going to be as all-stars as they ended up being.
In that day, and still to this day, I think the best we ever had was Larry Phillips. He could just, some of the other guys could come and win, but if they outrun Larry, they had a good night or he had a bad night.
And we've heard that more than
Yeah,
we've heard that more than once. Different people that we've talked to also.
I know from other regions, everybody's got their favorites, the northern guys, but as far as our area, dirt, pavement, Larry was a cat daddy. It made no difference.
Yeah, and I remember him coming to Razorback in the late 60s, early 70s, just clean up. I mean, just win the races and leave, and everybody's like, who the crap was that? And so he was good for a long time, real good. Later in the show, I had an opportunity to race with him at Lebanon. We'll get there. It was interesting.
What like I said, with your dad, do you think your dad ever envisioned when he was building that racetrack that it would kind of become a regional staple that it had? Do you think that ever occurred to him?
I don't think he had any idea that it would last this long or be what it turned into. I think he had visions of being a good thing. And the trouble with pavement, everybody's, in my opinion, a little bit confused. They thought the price of the cars is what killed pavement. But it was the times. On pavement, the Howe cars showed up, the Baker Motors and stuff, and it killed the local guys. It didn't run them. So then in 79, when they went back to dirt, your homemade cars was competitive again, but for a year or two, and then either aftermarket cars started showing up. So I think it was the times and not the surface.
I will say this. My opinion of it, if you had a pavement car and you were learning how to race, if your front end was off just a little bit, you're not gonna run up front. You're gonna get lapped quick. Where on dirt, if you didn't have your front end alignments quite right, you could still enjoy an evening of racing. You might not win, but you're not gonna go a lap down.
Dirt was a lot more forgiving.
Yeah.
First, it
Yeah.
wasn't as fast,
Yeah.
and you could spin out and survive. The pavement, your car was either real straight or real wrecked. There just wasn't much in between.
When the switch from pavement to dirt occurred, what was the consensus in the area? I mean, how did everybody feel about that?
Around my group of people, we loved the pavement because we was doing well on pavement. That makes a lot of difference. But because of the price of gas and because there wasn't no asphalt tracks near here, the car count had got really low. And when they changed over right in the middle of the year. That Saturday night, we didn't know that the next week was going to be dark. We heard Thursday night they was putting dirt on the track, so we was all shocked. We went up there at these pavement cars and we now had a dirt track. But we understood the car count was low, and when they went dirt, it seemed like the fan base did go up. We had a whole lot more cars. You had Muskogee and all these other tracks that could come here.
Well, it certainly over the years has been a racetrack that drew in the top drivers in the region.
Yeah.
And that's something that you guys have got to be proud of because, you know, y'all are some of the top competitors out there, and you know, I feel like that a lot of these guys came in to see if they could beat y'all.
Well, in our respectable divisions, probably so. But in that 2 or 3 years there, when Rusty Wallace was coming through and Mark Martin, they was clearly coming through for a championship, and they wasn't none of us going to stop them from getting it. You know, Larry Phillips could have stopped them, but he just didn't come here before.
And somebody else we want to get into a little bit, and that's Cecil Harlan, which, I mean, you just look around, he's probably one of the greatest promoters that ever existed. And, you know, talk a little bit about Cecil if you would.
As a person and a friend, man, him and I were really good. He had his way of packing the stands and plenty of cars. You know, just his way of doing it seemed to work.
The reason Cecil became a promoter was he worked at the Southwest Times Record, our local newspaper, him and Ken Fry. And they had done the program at Razorback, and when Dad took over Mighty Mouse, Dad knew they had an in with the newspaper. And he asked them if he'd give them the program and wanted to know if they would help on the promotional side. And Cecil was good at that. He was a good promoter. He was good with people, but he was good at doing strange things like every year your championship, your champion winners, they would have to go to the hospital and give away gifts to the kids, and he'd have a parade, Christmas parade. He'd take his champions down there. He just worked it and worked it all year long.
Which was a good thing.
Yes.
You know, I don't think, or I don't know of anywhere in Arkansas or in the region where the drivers got as much press coverage as what you guys did.
I don't think anybody did. He just had an in with the newspaper, and I mean every week you can bet that Tri-State was going to be in the paper.
You know, whether y'all like it or not, you know, y'all were just, you know, in the race community, you guys up here in the Fort Smith area, y'all were local celebrities. You know, you may chuckle about that, but for all fairness, you really were back then. Y'all were as well known as, you know, in the Fort Smith area as
But
People
that,
that played on the Razorback football team.
but that was because of Cecil, because he had such an in with the newspaper.
Yeah.
I've got articles, I got scrapbooks there. Everybody looks dingy because it's all about me, you know, because you don't keep other people's stuff. But I've got a lot of the clippings out of the newspaper deal. That he kept people involved, and these people, the factors and stuff, they would read this, and they'd get interested in it from reading it in the paper, and they'd come watch, come see who these guys are. And
Yeah.
Cecil was awful good about talking about the fighting, you know, the cheating, but that kept people interested in racing.
Cecil was good about starting something with drivers, whether there's anything going on or not. If you have a little skirmish on the track, you know, and the two drivers worked it out, well, you see something in the newspaper next week, come back and see if Chuck Knight retaliates or whatever, and, you know, and boy, that just brings them in, you know.
Well, he would play the game. He would
Yeah.
he would put the bad guy against the good guy, and the rich guy against the poor guy. And he made a story. You know, really racing is more about a show than it is a race. The race is the show, but he put a lot of show stuff out there to make people interested in it.
You know, and I think from a promotional standpoint, too many track owners and too many promoters, and we talk about, forget that they're in the entertainment business.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they,
For the first 5 or 10 years I raced, I just thought I was a racer. And later in life, you realize you were really in the entertainment business.
Yeah.
You needed to look at it like that, as well as looking at it as a driver.
And you said one thing a while ago about going to places and drivers going. You know, we talked about that. That means a lot to a lot of these young kids when a driver comes
yeah.
up to the stands and they get to see
Yeah.
somebody that, you know, they see the car, but they don't get to see the driver.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of these young guys. We talked to John Wall back on. You know, he was a kid that goes over before the races up at Batesville and
Yeah.
sees the kids and the people in the stands. And that means a lot to, you know, like I said, they see the car, but they don't see the driver.
Right.
and I think one of the things, especially back in Cecil's time, that helped the racing in the Fort Smith area, if you were from out of the area, like we were, and you kept up, you know, in the Southwest Times, when you
Right.
got to the races, you knew everybody
You
there.
knew-
You may
you
not
knew.
be from Fort Smith,
Right.
but you knew who you guys were.
Yeah. You knew what
And-
car you was looking for, and
And, you know, you just don't have that in today's racing world, or at least, you know, I don't see it as much as what we need to. You know, Cecil, he just always seemed like that, you know, like I said, if there was a problem, he just seemed like he had a natural ability to work those problems out, and everybody was ready to come back and race again next week.
Cecil had a knack for people liked him. They wanted to help him. He could walk into a shop and people just liked him. They wanted to help him. They wanted to sponsor him. And he would, every winter, they had a little program that's called the Winter Racer. He'd go around through the week. He'd take pictures of different drivers and talk to them and stuff. Like when my son was born, he'd come to the hospital and took pictures and stuff. But he was using that to promote that racetrack, and people liked that.
And, you know, for any track over promoters that are going to be watching this either tonight or later on in the week, we really wish that you'd pay attention to some of the things that we're talking about. Because, you know, like I said, one thing Cecil did is he took these guys and other racers in the Fort Smith area and made local heroes out of them, and we need to be doing the same thing in today's time.
You got to keep your fans interested, and you got to do it all through the winter. You just can't close your racetrack down and let it sit dormant all winter. You got to promote this thing all winter long. And when you're at the racetrack, nobody likes to be called a cheater, but the fans, if somebody comes through tech and you find their car illegal, it should be announced so these people in the stands, they can become part of the program. They can know what these guys are doing, and they just don't do that. Everything's kept secret, and it should be
Right.
out there to try to build up the fan base.
We agree.
Yeah.
We're kind of there. I mean, it's,
We agree. What Chuck is, when you got heavily involved and when you went to racing full seasons, tell us about some of your years there and championships that you won.
Well, I probably mentioned that I won my first one in '71, but I did run. I had a car. I raced it all year. My dad had helped me financially, and then kind of sputtered the next 2 or 3 years, and about '74 or '5. I won the Super Stock Championship at Tri-State, and what happens, the car count had got down, and they stopped the class and moved us up into the late models, and that's about the era Tilly was talking about. The car count had just getting bad, and so the short season, I was on top of it. And then sputtered along there again. I ended up with a late model that I bought from Truman Phipps, and a couple of my friends started helping me with it, Joe Cox and some more people, and we got it back out to the track, and I raced it a little bit for a couple of years, and but just really couldn't afford to be in a late model at the time, and then things ended up dirty here. So I ended up with I had built probably one of the first struck cars in the area in '84. I built that. I guess the car itself was an '82 model. So it's relatively a new car. And I built that, and the first year it run really good. I had some success with it, and then the next couple of years, I really won a lot of races with it, and sold it, and built another one. I actually sold that car to J.B. Brotherton that owns Rodex Heads. But I built another one, and that car was really ahead of its time, but really ahead of its time. It was really a nice car. I think about when I quit running that car, I think they kind of outlawed that wheelbase, didn't they, Kelly, for a while? Seems like they did. But I also knew that I was fixing to go pavement racing in Missouri, and I wanted to get at least another track championship under my belt. So you got something on your resume, and so I buckled down and run the next 2 years really hard, and I won the Tri-State Championship in '89, and then I won the Crawford Championship and Crawford County Speedway Championship in '90. And in '90, I lost the championship at Tri-State to Steve Bradley by 5 points. But those 2 years, I really buckled down and tried to get after it. And then I sold all that stuff, and I didn't do anything. I run a modified once or twice, but didn't do anything until '92, and then I got my pavement stuff going, and went to Lebanon, Missouri, and raced then. The championships are hard to come. I mean, you've got to be so dedicated to get a track championship. It takes, not only does it take the time and effort, it takes the money, and then you got to have some luck. I don't care how good you are, But you got to race all year through, and I sputtered along there some of the years and didn't race a full season.
It used to be a lot harder to win a championship because used to the high point guys start tailback.
At the back.
If there was 25 cars, that's where you started.
Yeah.
And I was good enough at finishing that my point average was always real high. So my wins don't look that great because I started so far back. But I could finish well, but that would kill you on your wins. But I won several championships just because of finishing.
What years were your championships, Tilly?
Boy, that'd be tough for me to remember. My first one was the
You
first
might,
year
you
I
might
raced.
want to get a notebook.
Yeah, if my wife was
Start
here,
writing them down, because I think he's got 8 or 9 or 10.
I've got a bunch, but my first one was in '73, and I was Rookie of the Year and track champion that year. Like I say, it was pavement. And in '74, I was leading points, but I got mono and had to quit. And then, so that year was a waste. And then there was several years I just didn't get to race, just couldn't afford to race. And then it seems like I always end up being a class when they wanted to lead it. And then I'd be caught without a car and have to sit out a year or two to get a car. We can't build a car in one winter because we do all of our own work. I'm talking about all of it. And that's happened to us this year with my son's car. They've kind of did that to us again. But the point deal, that was good for the stands to see the fast guy come from the back. You got people now, and you got, not gonna call them names, but you got a lot of your big guys that if they're running, I don't know, 10th or 12th, they'll just pull in because they know they need to run 5th to make any money. Well, when we raced, or when I raced, we'd race till they turned out the lights. We just come to race. We didn't care if we run last or second. Just want to pass somebody.
Yeah, we've talked about that before with racing, that you know, you get the people in the stands, they want to see passing, they want to see action in racing. And when you get to where you've got the same person or the same 3 or 4 that's right there at the front at the end of the night, you know, they pretty much know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But if you take like you're saying, you invert, you got these guys starting there at the back, or you take the top 15 and you draw.
Yeah.
You don't know where you're going to start.
Yeah.
It makes it a lot more interesting
to get up there.
to get back up there.
I've seen a lot of really nice, big money shows won by somebody that probably never passed the car all weekend. You know, you draw good, you get out there, and they earn them. You win your heat race, and you had a good start in your heat race, and you win your heat race, and you're on the pole of the main, and you win the main. You made all this money and ain't passed the car yet. And unfortunately, that happens a lot now because nobody has to come off the back. I've seen some drivers come off the back, don't get me wrong, but it's so hard to do.
When IMCA come to Tri-State, your high point guy in IMCA back then, I don't know what they're up to now, but back then you started 12th. And we thought that was wonderful. We're finally getting to start up in the field some. But now, boy, if you tell somebody they got to start 12th, they're like, we don't want to race.
Oh yeah, we're in a deal where we want to reward, or we expect to be rewarded for winning all the time. And like I said, you go back from a promotional standpoint, we forget, that we're in the entertainment business, and we've got to put a good show on for the fans, and the drivers have, especially in this day and age, have got to have a better understanding, a better feeling that it's all right to win, but we also need to put on a good show to keep the stands packed.
Without the people in the stands, you're not going to be out there racing because they're going to shut the tracks down.
I've had some nights where I started like 15th or 18th and run 3rd or 5th, and really pleased with what I did.
Those are good nights.
Yeah, I'm pleased. I did my job tonight. But then I've had nights where I've started front row or second row. You win the race, you run off with the race. It's kind of like kissing your sister. It's just nothing. You've not really done nothing.
Right. I want to go back several years with you to a race, and I believe it was a race that Cecil put on, the Marty Robbins Memorial Race. And you and Mark Martin had come in to race that night, and he was driving one of Stanley Morris's 10 and a half cars from Stanley's from Paragould, Arkansas. And it seems like, if memory serves me right, you had some mechanical issues in a heat, left, made repairs, and come back, and really gave Mark all he could handle that night in the feature.
Well, I hate that I don't remember that. I would love to remember that.
But I was there for that race, and I was really impressed with the job that you did.
I personally like the pavement better. I feel like
And this was on a dirt. This was on dirt. This was on dirt, and But something else, and
I think I do remember, I might have been driving Dennis Crowder's car that night. I think I do remember.
but you had a mechanical issue and loaded up and left, and was back just right after intermission, and really, it was Mark won the race, but just barely eased you out at the finish line on the last lap.
Well, thank you for remembering that. You're probably the only one in the world that remembers that.
But tell us where the 007 comes from.
I couldn't afford to race, and Kenneth Barner had met Jack and Peggy Eccles, and they was hot wanting a race car and a driver. And I was young, and Peggy had a son that was about my age, but he was in a motorcycle accident, and he passed away. But before he passed away, he liked racing. They did too. His mother promised she'd get somebody to drive a race car with their name on it, 007 kid. So Kenneth come to me and said that Peggy and them would furnish a car. I'd have to build it, but I'd have to run that number. Well, being young, that's exactly what I wanted, but it ended up being a good friendship. They sponsored me for a long, long time, and they finally went their way, but we're still friends this day. Jack has passed away, but Peggy's still a good friend of ours. But years after they was gone, I built another car, and I was going to change my car number. My mom, my dad, my wife, nobody talked to me. I had to go back to 007. I didn't really care for a 3-digit number, but it just stuck. That's what I had to be.
And Chuck, you've been associated with the number 60 for a long time. Where did that come from?
You know, my family, my dad owned cars and flagged the races. He never was a driver. And his number and my grandpa's number was 60. Now, all my uncles was 5. So I really remember 5. And I thought about having 5 for my number as I started. And right at the very last minute, I went with a 60, and I hadn't changed.
Yeah, I wish we could show the photo, but Chuck was showing us before the show a photo of his dad flagging at the old Razorback Speedway, and he was standing out at the edge of the track.
Right on the ground, just flagging like a wild man. Yeah, he'd run out there and flag and run back off the track. Yeah, and which is how they all did it back then. You know.
And our flagman at Tri-State, Stick, Chris Hiley's his real name, we call him Stick. We keep telling him for the show we need to put him back out in the racetrack and let him get out there because several would like to run over him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, he's definitely tall enough everybody can see him.
Yes.
Out of here.
Yes.
What about, like I said, we're up here in Fort Smith tonight, and one of the things that, that we're out doing is just, collecting the history of motorsports throughout the state of Arkansas. What about some of the other tracks that existed in the area back in the old days?
Well, we had a Flying Saucer track was the name of it. Now, I was too young to race there, but my dad flagged there. And then we had a track in Sallisaw, Oklahoma, which is about 20 minutes away. And then we had a track in Sequoyah County, just across the bridge over here. And then Crawford County, Razorback, and Tri-State. Now, they did have a track over here in Oklahoma for half a season.
Yeah, and they had a track at Jenny Lynn.
Jenny Lynn, yeah. They had a track just over here that was really a nice facility, and it just run a half a season.
Yeah.
And I was leading them points, too, when they quit. So that's just been the story of mine.
The Flying Saucer that he's talking about, Don Schoenfield lives on where the front straightaway was. He lives right in turn 4 of the old Flying Saucer Speedway. It's behind St. Edward's Hospital over there.
Yeah.
I had heard of that, but I wasn't exactly sure where the location was.
Crawford County's probably been around as long as any of them, and man, they still pack the house over there. A lot of cars, a lot of fans.
What you look around the state, in a lot of, like I said, and it's probably a lot to do with the times that we live in today, but the sport's somewhat dwindled in other parts of the state, but here in the Fort Smith area, it seems to be, in my opinion, the biggest market. What do you think it is about the Fort Smith area that has kept the sport alive up here to the extent that it has.
I just think we've got a strong base. If you have a good program, Fort Smith people, not as much as they used to. Razorback Speedway in '65, their old programs, you can go back and read, they got paid by how many people was in the stands, so that made the racers get out, ask their friends to come and stuff. But you can read in their programs where they had 1,500 people on a regular Saturday night. That's just unheard of anymore.
Right.
But still, our fan base in Fort Smith, if you've got a good race, a good class coming through, you'll pack the stands. Of course, the stands are smaller than they used to be, but you still pack them out. But you got so many more people going to the pits than you used to.
That's true.
Yeah, a lot of your spectators now go to the pits. I don't go to Tri-State a lot, but when I do, if it's a decent race, if it's a big race or the Spooker or whatever, I'm liable to have 25 pit passes in my area, which those people would have years ago been in the stands,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
And that's good information, to know.
Yeah.
Is that, sometimes you look out the grandstands and they're not as full as what you'd like to see, but, it's good to know that, that they're still showing up for the races. They're just going to a different part of the speedway.
I have
There
no
is-
idea how many people the stands hold at Tri-State now, but like for the Spooker, they was crowded. But the pits, you couldn't even walk through the pits at the Spooker, and it costs, 3 times more to go to the pits, so it's really good for the promoter.
And a lot of those people are going over there because they want to look at the car. They want to get up close. They,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that that's something, and just get your opinion on it. But what is track owners and promoters do we do to get the spectators and the fans more involved in the sport?
I don't know. I mean, once again, I just think you need to start some of them faster cars to the back somewhere. If not the back, just don't, and sometimes I'm a faster car, but that don't mean, and I'm gonna start on the front if they let me, but spectator-wise, I think
Yeah, nobody-
people enjoy to
no-
see us pass somebody.
Nobody wants to go watch a parade. They want to watch Chuck or Larry Phillips, or I don't know who the big dog is now, but they want to watch them guys pass people. Because it just, I do. When I go to grandstands, I don't like seeing the fast guys on the front.
But you said something that was very, very important and that I really liked earlier. The nights that you had to start in the back, maybe 20, 25 cars, and maybe you didn't win, but you come to third, you really felt like you done your job.
Oh, I feel
Yeah.
like I
And-
really did well. I
Yeah.
did beyond what I thought I could do. But if you look at them, when you go read the newspaper, you'll see where you finished 5th or 8th or whatever. But then that's still, to me, of course, financially it wasn't a smart thing to do. But if you start on the front and finish on the front, you ain't done nothing.
I've
In my
run.
opinion.
It is different. I mean, even if you win, it's great. Everybody wants to win. Yeah, I hadn't won in a while. I'd love to win, but it's just different if you earn it. It's just different. But speaking of that, I when I was running the late model pavement series in Lebanon, to get in the tech barn each night, you had to be in the top 4. Well, I was in the tech barn every night. I thought, man, this is great. This is great. Now, you didn't always get to start up front. Well, one night I had to start, I want to say 24th, and I made it up to 5th. And I was just brokenhearted that I didn't get in that tech building. You had to run the top 4, and I drove on to the pits, and that was the only time all year I missed the tech barn. But I drove on to the pits, and by the time I got to my pits, I was okay. I was all right. I passed, I don't know how many cars. I had a good night. I passed several cars and run 5th. And I was over it. And I got out of the car, and one of the guys on the crew said, "Man, what's the matter with the car? What's wrong?" And I looked at him, and I'm like, "Man, I I just passed 19 cars in 20 laps. You know, I think I done all right. I just didn't get in the tack barn.
Chuck, talk to us a little bit about, you talked about running there at Lebanon, but
Yeah.
you ventured out to the All-Pro Series.
Yeah.
And from Fort Smith, Arkansas, to running the All-Pro Series, it's a long way to get there because it
Yeah.
goes from here, or not really here, but I mean, you had to travel from here down to the East Coast.
Yes, every race was either on the East Coast or we run a few north, but most of them were all the way out there. There's a few in between, but most of them was out there. Yeah, I knew in '88 and '89, Rick Reedy, my car owner, knew we both knew what we wanted to do, and that's when I buckled down and got them 2 championships, and then. We had to order a car, and I ended up setting out a year, and it took me a year to sell everything that I had anyway, and went to Lebanon, and we went there first because I hadn't run any asphalt for a while. In '78 was the last time I got to run any asphalt.
And we're talking at 92,
This
93.
is 90, yeah, this is 92 now.
92.
And so we decided we'd run Lebanon, Missouri for 1 year and really try to win that championship, to take that with us. And because we knew we were going to go all-pro racing. And we ended up second or third in their points. I led their points off and on and ended up winning the Rookie of the Year deal, which I was really proud of. But once again, we knew we didn't have time to stay up for another year. We went on and entered this series, and man, that was rough. That was a rough way to go from Arkansas. We didn't have a crew. We didn't have much equipment, but we knew what we wanted to do, and we run about almost 2 full years, and decided that financially we needed to woe up some,
And that makes it tough when you go run the All-Pro Series and you don't have a crew and you're having to.
right.
I mean, when most of those guys got somebody that's changing their tires and doing their all that, it makes
Yeah.
it real difficult.
The first half of the first season, I would take 1, maybe 2 guys with me at the most. Buck, that gentleman there, went with me once, and we had several people just, hey, can you go? Can you go? I mean, we're just begging people to go. But for the whole first half of the first season, I didn't have enough crew to pit my car. So I had become real good friends with Mike Cope at the time, and he had a full crew. He had his tire changers, his crew chief. He had everything he needed, and the equipment. We didn't even have the equipment that we really needed. And he became a real good friend of mine, and the first 4 or 5 races, I wasn't staying on the lead lap, so it wasn't an issue. And when it come time to pit for a caution or whatever, he would pit. He would be on the lead lap. Well, I wouldn't be. So as he'd pull out, then the lap down cars would pit. So I would use his pit crew. We'd park beside each other, and I would just use his pit crew, and they'd pit my car, and then I'd go back out, but my lap down. Well, as the season went on, I got to where I could stay on the lead lap, and but there I was in the same dilemma. No pit crew. And they throw the yellow. It's time to pit, and I can't pit because I don't have a pit crew. So I'd let the lead lap cars pit, and then I'd stay, and then I'd go in and pit with the lap down cars, which put me a lap down, and it was just tough to try to compete, but I wouldn't trade none of it for nothing, man. I mean, we learned so much and enjoyed so much, and I eventually got me a crew chief, and then eventually got me enough friends in that area that they knew they were coming to the races with another team, and they would, it finally got to where I had me a group that was going to show up and help me pit. And
Mike won a lot of races back then in that
Mike
same
Cope,
time.
Mike Cope was really good at that time, and Billy Bigley and Joe Ridley, and Darrell Waltrip would sneak in that series and run a couple times. Schrader and there was a lot of, man, there's a lot of competitive cars in that, and I was glad I got to do it. Unfortunately, I spent the first half of the season not being able to do it, not being able to keep up. And then as the season went on, and I got my crew, and I got me a crew chief, we were a top 10 car. We were a top 8, 9, 10 car for the rest of the year. And then you felt like you're gaining ground, but you're just swimming for the first 6 races, trying to do it. And then we got together the following year and picked up a little sponsorship that lasted, about a half a season, and we raced again. We had NASCAR money coming in also. You earned NASCAR money from racing the previous year, so they paid us a little bit of money each week when you showed up, And they basically called that your sticker package, which has faded away today, but you had to have your stickers in the right spot and stuff, and you earned points and money for that. But we ended up okay. I mean, we run, I think, 11th or 12th in their points, and I was runner-up rookie. I think Buckshot Jones beat me out at the time, and he went on. I think he went on to run some NASCAR stuff, But I wouldn't trade it for nothing. I mean, it wore me out. I mean, I worked at Train here, 40-hour a week, and I was back here on Monday morning at work, And we'd leave every Thursday. It was brutal.
Tough schedule. Tough travel.
Yeah.
Back here at home, who were some of the guys that y'all felt were some of your toughest competition?
Boy, in the classes I ran, we had lots of people tough. We had Danny Shepard back in the hobby stock days.
When we first got going, our friend Joe Cox wore us out for probably 2 years. And
the first year of pavement, Joe Cox, my dad's shop wasn't very far from the racetrack, so they would bring Joe. They had Fort Smith Racing Association, and they was real strict on their rules. But they brought Joe's car to my dad's shop to tear it apart. Dad always had an empty bay for him because he was there a lot. he wore them out.
He wore us out and made us like it, and he was just so much smarter than us. He ended up being a machinist. And
yes, he won the championship at Tri-State in 72, and he didn't race that class in 73, and I started racing in 73. They still had the Fort Smith Racing Association. They told my dad it wasn't a good idea for me to race, and they'd have to make an example out of me, and boy did they. But they wouldn't let me take it to Dad's shop to tear apart. I got to tear mine apart on pit road, so it's a different deal.
In researching these guys racing back a long time ago, Tilly had raced a car one time that had a body on it, which is your favorite car, the Corvair.
Hey, you're a good man. I got a buddy, his name's Danny Womack, and he thinks he's the greatest thing that's ever raced. And he's pretty good, and we talk daily. But every time he gets a mouth, I keep telling him I'm going to bring the Corvair back. He just hates this Corvair. I've seen him pictures of it. We got pictures of it from the ground up. Clint was a photographer. I wore him out on that Corvair. But it was ugly, but man, when you're 16 years old, you get a chance to race something, but it was a 55 Chevrolet frame. It was just a Corvair body.
Yeah.
Which all of them was at that point in time was the 55 Chevrolet.
Well, I wanted a 55. My dad had a salvage yard, and Clint, we didn't have much money, so we had to use what they'd give us, whatever we wanted out of the salvage yard. Well, Dad had a bunch of Corvairs because you can get away. We really wanted a Chevy 2-body because they had the shorter wheelbase than the 55 Chevy. But Chuck was still in the 55 Chevy at that time, and it was going, and that's really what I wanted. But anyway, I got a Corvair and was just pleased to have something to race.
That picture that I got of me and you racing, I was in a Chevy 2 then, and you was in your Corvair, but my chassis was a 57 Chevrolet frame and suspension. Yeah.
Well, that picture of that 55 Chevy that Chuck turned over, that was 73 because that's my first year to race. And that car was a lot faster than our Corvair was, and we could run mirrors on asphalt. And I was leading the race, and I was watching Chuck coming, and he was coming in a hurry. And Donnie Crasper on Southwest Speed, he was having mechanical trouble going down the front row, and he'd slowed down. Chuck was fixing to blow by, but I don't know what he was looking at. He wasn't looking where he was going. He run right up the back of Donnie's car, and that's why he's upside down against the fence right there.
My first 3 or 4 race cars, I got the roof tore off of them. I was pretty hard on them.
He never was real smart. He's pretty fast, but he just wasn't very bright.
I drove the wheels off of them, top and bottom.
Yeah,
for a while.
he didn't bring much home after the races.
Yeah.
But going back again, talking about more people say go back to the '80s. Who was tough back in the '80s that y'all raced with? '80s, that time period there.
Local, we had Dennis Crowder. He was awful competitive. Schoenfield was still racing around that one
Don
time.
Schoenfield was really good for a local.
Dale Walford, he was beginning to age out about that time, but he was still real competitive.
Billy Hunter was real good.
Yeah, we had Mike Shook. He was fast. Had good equipment. James Welch, who built his stuff for years, kept Shook fast. We had a lot of locals that was really good.
But what about nowadays going into 2021? What are you anticipating for 2021, Chuck?
Myself, it's no secret. I'm 60, fixing to be 67 years old. That's no secret. I let everybody know.
You are 67. You're not fixing to be.
But, well, I thought it was next week.
Oh, okay.
But I still, as long as I feel good, and I'm competitive. Now, if I'm in people's way, I ain't gonna be racing. But, if I'm a top 10 car this year, I'll race, as much as I can. Once again, I usually average about 10 races a year, but that's what I want to do, We'll see. The rule change has got us kind of messed up with these cars.
I didn't realize last night how old I really was, but I knew I was coming to this deal, and I was afraid I was going to ask when was the last year I raced, so I had to ask my wife, because I can't remember nothing no ways. Anyway, I hadn't raced in 16 years.
Has it been that long?
It's been that long. That is just sad.
Now your son Ty, he's been racing how many years?
He started racing about the time I quit.
And
I had to quit because my mom and dad's health had started failing, and I couldn't take a chance again. I never worried about getting hurt in a car. You just don't think about that until you get somebody that depends on you and you only. So I had to get out. But he was at an age that he was wanting to race anyway. So when I stepped out, his first car, it was one of my cousin's old car that was sitting out in our junkyard. He gets out there and he puts it together. I was going to see if he's serious about doing this. So anyway, he started racing my cousin's car. Then after that, we started building cars. But we're in trouble. They've hurt our class. They killed our class. So we got us a B mod. He traded his old leaf spring car for a B mod 2 years ago. And we're trying to put together, and I'm so outdated on the B mod deal. It's been so long since I raced modified, never run a B mod. We're struggling, and we don't know when we'll get it going, but I hope he has a good time with it, because it's still a car. It's something to race.
And he's had an exceptional career since he's been racing.
Ty's come a long way in a
Yes.
short time. Probably his last 3 or 4 years, he's won some races, some good races against some good cars.
And I'll say this, I seen him come into Batesville twice this year
And run good.
and almost won the J.D. Garrison Memorial Race, and that was really impressive. And then when you come back for the Schoenfield Header Street Stock show, had a great run up there that weekend, and it's, you've done exceptionally well, and it was always exciting to look up the results of Tri-State and see how well the old leaf spring car did, with the metric cars, and was just always, proud of what you was able to do with a leaf spring car in today's racing age.
We went to Salina this year, and he's never raced at Salina. He goes out, and We didn't know at Salina after you win your heat race that you go up there and you get $50 bonus, you know, for a sponsorship type deal. So we didn't know this. We really didn't think he's going to win anyways. But my wife knew this. I don't know how she knew you were supposed to do that. So Ty, he wins his heat race. And then he comes in, he's disappointed because they said you didn't go up there, you didn't go get your, what was it, $50? Huh? 100. You're not going to get your $100. But they ended up getting it because he didn't know. But anyway, on the way home, Ty says, just didn't know you're supposed to go up there. And my wife says, well, I knew it. And he says, well, why didn't you tell me? She says, I never thought you'd need to know that. And then he won the feature after that.
But he's got an excellent career ahead of him, and Chuck, you've really been real competitive in the big street stock races at Batesville, and you know
that track just really suits my style. You know, it's one of them you got to get up on the wheel and hang on, and if you let off, 3 people's gonna drive by you.
But I mean, you talk about your age. And going from the strut car to this car here, you adapted to it very well.
The car, I've built every race car I've ever drove, and I knew I was getting old, and my crew was bugging me. You know, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? And I finally give in and bought a car that Tony Jackson had built. I just wanted to try something that somebody else was building, just to see what I was missing. Am I doing something wrong? I've set my own front ends. I scale my own cars. I build my own cars, and I've raced off my own knowledge, and I was getting beat. Didn't like it. So I give in and bought one and gained some knowledge, and the cars were real drivable, so I adapted to it pretty quick. And I took that knowledge and still some of the things that I do and kind of blended them together, and the car's really fast, you know.
I'm old and hard-headed, and we went to Batesville this year, and Wayne Brooks, we had to park beside Wayne, and I know him from 100 years ago, but don't know him very well. Well, he was nice, and I don't know why he took interest in our car, but he kept looking it over and talking to us about this, and he watched us race, and I'm real thick-headed. I don't listen to nobody, just kind of do my own deal, because I've been lied to so much, it just confuses me. But anyway, it's after the heat race, and Wayne Brooks comes over there, and he says, you know, I really think you need to do this, this, or this. And my son knows how hard-headed I am. I ain't going to do that. And Wayne walks off, and we just don't work on the car at the track. I think if your car's ready when you get there, you shouldn't have to work on it. We're over there changing stuff. We're pulling stuff up. And Ty says, what's wrong with you? I said, Wayne Brooks says that I'm doing it. So
yeah. And something else, you know, with cars and like I said, you use the term a lot, factory built race cars, especially down the street stocks. But you know, one thing I want to point out is you know, y'all come up there and run very well on a car that y'all built at y'all's shop, and you know, that's something that in today's age is you don't see a lot of, and you know, we're proud to see people do that. And
we have built every car we ever had. And we run the leaf spring car way past its time. There's nothing wrong with the leaf spring car. It's a leaf springs, in my opinion. You can't get a good leaf spring. Every leaf spring we put on there, it just wads up. So we waited too late to build the metric cars. I looked everybody's cars over that I could. Ty was wanting a metric car, but we knew this class was coming to end. But I'd been preaching it for 10 years. It's class in trouble. He wanted one. We built it. And I'm glad we did, because he looked so much better in the coil spring car than he did the leaf spring car. It was amazing. I would never thought that.
Yeah, he adapted to it real quick.
On Batesville, and being, as both of y'all have thought about it, this year, with the factory stocks up there,
or the IMCA,
yeah, have y'all thought about, you know, running that?
We're not going to build a car until we see something staying in one direction, because it takes us so long to build a car, because we really do build a car. But speaking of Batesville, I've been to a lot of races at Batesville. I just love Batesville. I don't know why. But Batesville's the dangest track I've ever seen in my life. Most tracks, like Tri-State, Crawford, anywhere we normally go, once you pass a guy, you can kind of forget about him. It's over with. It's on to the next guy. Batesville, you'll pass him, he'll pass you right back. I've never seen a track so back and forth in my life as that track.
Very racy. Really.
Very
Yeah.
racing. Several good racing groups.
Yeah.
Well, the class that we was running up there, this class, most of the guys in this class has just run this class so long, and they've run against each other so long that they're all good, they're all clean, and you can go race and not worry about getting run over unless it's just one of those deals. But some tracks like Salina, golly, they're rough up there, you know, it's just, but Batesville, they're just not that way.
And I know Chuck will say this, you know, like on the big street stock races at Batesville. I know when those lineups come out, you know, for those qualifying heats, there's no easy ones.
No.
You earn your starting spot.
Yeah, you think, well, maybe I'll draw a decent heat race. Well, you did. You drawed the last heat race, and you're in there with 5 people you can't outrun before the race even starts.
But it's crazy at Batesville. We laugh because Ty would pass somebody, they just pass him right back, and he'd end up passing each other 5 or 8 times, the same guy in the same race. And then you'll be racing with him, you'll pass a couple, but still you're racing the same guy again.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Well, guys, is there anything else where we program directors over there signaling for an hour? Is there anything else y'all would like to say before we sign off tonight?
I'd like to just suggest to people, go to the track, meet your drivers,
Yeah.
and it's okay not to like some, and it's okay to love others. That's what makes the sport good. If it wasn't that way, it'd be so boring, it's terrible anyway. Go meet them. They're just, when I was young, Larry Phillips, these guys, I thought was God or something, you couldn't go talk to them. All these drivers, they're people just like us. Just go meet them and like them or hate them, but go watch them.
Yes, sir.
I agree with all that. I got a great Larry Phillips story if you want to hear
Please.
it. It's when we were running Lebanon up there. That was his territory also, and he was running for the national championship and running 2 nights a week, and he was turning in 40 starts to the national deal, and you know your best 40, you can turn in 40 starts, and he'd always have 40 wins, but anyway, that was his area, and he was always, you know, he's always smoking and stuff. Well, I'd outrun him in a heat race or two, and then I actually won an A feature one night up there, and I had to pass him to do it. It was really a good night for me, but as I became more competitive with him, I just remember us in a heat race one night, and side by side, getting ready to start the race, and you know he always smoked them cigarettes, and he was notorious for it. But that one particular night, he was on the outside and I was on the inside, and I was a little bit lagging back just a little bit, you know, and sure enough, here come that cigarette out the window, and he looked right at me and flipped that cigarette at me on the pace lap. And I thought, well, that's just Larry, you know. He was just letting me know right then and what was fixing to happen, and I was going to like it.
Ask him about the time Rusty took him home.
Yeah.
Have you got time for
Yes, we got time. We're not just limited to an hour.
They had a big fight on the front straightaway, and the flagman, David Busby, who passed away the other day, by the way, he went up there, and the flagman kicked him in the face and knocked him down. So they get the ambulance up there and they haul him off, or tried to haul him off. Anyway, they didn't have enough ambulance for everybody. So anyway, Jimmy John Howard, he's a chief of police. He told me to move the police car out of the way so they could get a pickup truck up there. They're going to put somebody in a pickup truck to take them to the hospital. Well, I'd been in trouble with this cop. Doug Prescott was his name. So he throws me in the car, and he's taking me to jail for stealing the police car. And they pulled a gun. It's a big deal. But anyway, Rusty was there at this time. And I got out of the police car, and I run down there.
Wallace.
Yes. I get out of the police car and I'm hunting for a place to hide. I'm in trouble. And Rusty had a bread van looking thing. So I jumped in the bread van and I'm up there on the top of it and the police is hunting me and I'm hid. It's after the race and nobody knows where I'm at. So we start to pull out the racetrack and I said, hey, you guys, our shop's just a couple miles down the road. I said, y'all driving by my shop. I said, y'all mind just dropping me off? He says, it scared me because I thought he was going to turn me into cops because we wasn't out of the racetrack yet. He says, you the guy the cops are after? I said, yeah, that's me. He says, yeah, we'll be glad to take you. They took me plumb up to my house.
That's both of those are great stories, and those are the kind of things that we're looking for because if we don't get those recorded or written down somewhere, they could be lost forever.
Yeah.
He's got one at Marty eating at his house, Marty Robbins.
Marty Robbins, Daddy owned the track then, and Marty come to our house. First he asked Dad, he says, there's someplace good around town to eat? And Dad said, yeah, and he told him about the different places. He said, but we got beans and cornbread at our house here in a little while. He said, well, I'll just come to your house. So he come to our house, ate beans and cornbread. And after the races next day, he asked my dad, he says, "Hey, them beans and cornbread." We all gone.
All go.
But it's just like I was telling you, go meet these people because they're just people. That's all they are.
And
Speaking of that Tri-State, I think one great thing they do today is you have to go through Tech and they drive you down in front of the grandstands
Yes.
to get back to the pits. I'm a little leery of that with the kids, but I think that's just a great idea. That's just a great idea because you're putting us drivers right there with the spectators for just that brief second as we drive by.
See, I thought that was a horrible idea, and I was wrong as usual. It's so hard on these birds and
Oh, it's
winds to
terrible.
slip them all the way in these
Yeah.
mini clutches. But the kids are eating that up.
right.
I don't know what the insurance people would really think about this deal, because, we contact, if somebody loses a radiator hose, but the people eat it up.
And that's the thing at the larger tracks like Tri-State or Batesville, the facilities are so large that the drivers of the cars are so far
So far
separated
away.
from the fans,
Yeah.
it's hard to have that
Yeah.
one-on-one contact.
Right.
Oh, and that's another thing. I always thought one reason Tri-State had a good crowd is because of the pits in the infield. I know it's a problem for safety and keeping people off the track, but it adds to the show. When there's a wreck or intermission, you can watch the drivers, and it's really nice. Like when the World Outlaw Late Models was there, just sitting there looking at all them pretty trucks and trailers and stuff, and they're wanting to move the pits back out of the track now. And I think it adds to the show. I really do.
I do too. Well, gentlemen, we appreciate y'all taking time out of your Tuesday night to sit down and visit with us about your careers and some Fort Smith area racing history. We really enjoyed this, and hopefully y'all will invite us back sometime. Heath, what have you got?
Oh, we'll be going.
Where are we going
to-
next week
we'll
if
be
weather's
going
permitting?
If weather permitting, we'll be going to Mapleville, Arkansas. Sprint car drivers,
Pitt Butler
Ed Butler,
and Cody Gardner.
Cody Gardner.
Yep. If weather's permitting.
If weather permitting.
Yeah.
So that'll be a great show. Also,
Yeah,
so
Pete Butler's a staple in Arkansas as far as sprint car racing goes, so we're excited that he's agreed to do a show with us. And
there's I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
There's
Chuck.
just so many. I'm thinking in my mind. There's just so many really good drivers that came up through here. I can't even think of all of them, but Tommy Laster, Tommy Joe Poucher. I mean, there was just so many come through here that won a lot of races.
See, that's what happens when we've both been around racing over 50 years, and you can sit and ask us who was the best, and going home, I'm going to think, why didn't I say
Yeah, why didn't I mention-
Laster was a cat daddy back
Yeah.
in that, or Bill Sanders or somebody like
Yeah.
that. There's just no end. 50 years of racing, there's no end to the good people we've seen.
Yeah.
But before we sign off, I want to leave y'all with something. And you asked that question, away from y'all. Y'all's names get brought up just about every time.
See, it just doesn't seem real. Isn't that amazing?
But
Yeah.
But you know, when you talk to somebody in this region, you know, who do you think was one of the top competitors at Tri-State in the Fort Smith area? You know, you don't ever get out of a conversation without Chuck Knight and Tilly Evans' name coming up, and you know, that's
Right.
something y'all should be really proud of.
That is cool.
I'm just glad people remember us. That's great.
Yeah.
And I wish today's promoters, I know it's hard to get in the newspaper now, but it is so neat. I'll be sitting there looking on the internet, up will pop a story from the old 70s or 80s, and here's where I did this, or Chuck did that. And it's so interesting to me. Well, my son, when he becomes an old man like me, there's no articles for people to put in there, and I just hate that.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that we decided to get out and travel around Arkansas is try to record some of this
Yeah.
history. And you know, it's like we were talking to some you know, some folks a couple of weeks ago. You know, isn't it going to be great? You know, 30 or 40 years from now, your grandkids can go on the internet and there's a video or there's a written story on there about you. And you know, motorsports just hasn't got the media coverage that it deserves, except during the time that Cecil was, you know, was doing his thing up here.
Yeah.
And you know, that's what this show and our magazine is all about, is recording, you know, this history of motorsports in Arkansas.
Chuck's got all these pictures in here. It makes him look like he's stuck on himself, but why would he have pictures of somebody else? I've got scrapbook, and my wife's put them together out of just piles of stuff. We won't hardly let nobody see my scrapbook because it makes it look like you're stuck on yourself.
does.
It does.
It does.
It's almost embarrassing.
And I struggled with my office, but what I wanted to do more than anything with my office was refresh my own memory of some of that stuff. I run across pictures in cars that I forgot about that I drove.
I just hate that one day. Now, Ty, he can show you pictures of anything in his phone, but one of these days that phone's going to die, or we're going to lose it.
Yeah.
Those pictures ain't going to be available 10, 20, 30 years from now, and I just hate that about our sport right now.
Well, if he goes on our magazine website and looks at the story on the Batesville street stock race for this past year, there's a nice photo of Ty out on the Batesville Motor Speedway racing. So I don't know if you've seen that, but look that up. It's in there. So, but anyway, we want to thank, as always, our program director Aaron Gilkey, because without him, we wouldn't be able to broadcast because we don't know how to set any of this equipment up.
Yeah.
Heath hasn't grasped it yet, but
Well, Time, thank you. We appreciate it. Because if it was left up to me and Chuck, we couldn't even turn it on.
right. But anyway, we again want to thank our sponsors tonight: Chambers Bank, 26 locations in Arkansas, 2 in Fort Smith. Shaw Race Cars up in Batesville, Western Petroleum. True Grit Auctions, again, go and check out their Facebook page for their online auction. It's going to be ended in just a few days.
This Thursday, I think.
This Thursday.
I think's when
A
it's
lot
ended.
of,
Got a lot of old cars and stuff
antique
in there.
cars and automobile memorabilia on there, and Phil Potts Complete Car Care over in Greenwood. So for Heath Tate, Chuck Knight, and Tilly Evans, I'm Bill Gilkey, and we'll see you back next Tuesday night from Mapleville, Arkansas with Pete Butler and Cody Gardner, weather permitting.